I'm continuing my reading. What I'm doing in the series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a little bit as I move along. I am still reading in the story of Solomon and his reign as king. We have done the dedication of the temple, and in chapter 9 of 1 Kings, we read about some further building projects and what happened in his reign after the temple and his own house was built. So we are going to pick this up in 2 Chronicles chapter 8. This will cover much of the same information that was in 1 Kings chapter 9. So here we go, chapter 8. Solomon builds cities. He offers sacrifices according to the law of Moses. Priests and Levites appointed to serve the Lord. And it came to pass at the end of 20 years, wherein Solomon had built the house of the Lord and his own house, that the cities which Hiram had restored to Solomon built them and caused the children of Israel to dwell there. And Solomon went to Hamath-zobah and prevailed against it. And he built Tadmor in the wilderness, and all the store cities which he built in Hamath. Also he built Beth-horon the upper and Beth-horon the nether, fenced cities with walls, gates, and bars, and Baalath, and all the store cities that Solomon had, and all the chariot cities, and the cities of the horsemen, and all that Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem, and in Lebanon, and throughout all the land of his dominion. Okay, so yes, this is just rehearsing much of what we read in 1 Kings chapter 9, but I do want to point out two things. I like this. First, Beth-horon the upper and Beth-horon the nether, which means lower, which means that these two cities, there was one in the mountains and one down in the plain, but they were close enough together as to be almost the same city. And so they were just called the upper and the lower. I like that. Just a little historical note. But also over here, it says the cities which Hiram had restored to Solomon. Now, if you'll recall, in 1 Kings, Solomon, as kind of payment for his help, gives Hiram, king of Tyre, 20 cities in the land of Galilee. But Hiram decides that the cities aren't any good. He even calls them Kabul, meaning displeasing or dirty. So apparently, he gave them back to Solomon, and apparently they were ruins. Abandoned ghost towns that had no economic value. And so Hiram gives them back to Solomon because he doesn't want them. And then Solomon goes and rebuilds them. Now, this could be good strategy on Solomon's part, thinking, hey, if I give him these bad cities as a token of my appreciation, he'll just give them back. And then I can rebuild them. Not a bad strategy, although a little bit not very nice to Hiram, you could say. It wasn't a good gift to give. Good strategy, but not good gift giving. But let us continue. Verse 7. And for all the people that were left of the Hittites and the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, which were not of Israel, but of their children who were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel consumed not, them did Solomon make to pay tribute unto this day. But of the children of Israel did Solomon make no servants for his work, but they were men of war, and chief of his captains, and captains of his chariots and horsemen. And these were the chief of King Solomon's officers, even 250 that bear rule over the people. So once again, Solomon is basically making slaves of all the Canaanites who are still in the land. Now, I'm not sure how well this sits with the law of Moses, which says that a stranger is supposed to have the same rights as a Israelite in the land. I know the Lord commanded them to just wipe out the Canaanites. They were supposed to drive them out completely, and they never did. But does that give them now the right to make slaves of all of them? It is a question, we'll say. Verse 11. And Solomon brought up the daughter of Pharaoh out of the city of David unto the house that he had built for her. For he said, My wife shall not dwell in the house of David, king of Israel, because the places are holy, whereunto the ark of the Lord hath come. Then Solomon offered burnt offerings unto the Lord on the altar of the Lord, which he had built before the porch, even after a certain rate every day, offering according to the commandment of Moses on the Sabbaths and on the new moons, and on the solemn feasts 3 times in the year, even in the feast of unleavened bread, and in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles. So in 1 Kings, it mentioned only him doing sacrifices 3 times a year, which would be in reference to these 3 feasts. But here it says he kept the daily sacrifices going in Jerusalem. He brought the centralized worship to Jerusalem. It used to be at Gibeon where the tabernacle was. Now the temple is built, and it is now in Jerusalem, following the law of Moses. But let's go back to his wife, the daughter of Pharaoh. Because remember, in 1 Kings, it just said that she left Jerusalem to go to her own house. And I mentioned that this was because she wasn't converted and she didn't want to be around the worship of God. But apparently, Solomon didn't want her around the worship of God. And I think she was not converted, because if she had been, then why would you worry about her being near? But he removed her from there so that she could have, and I think it was because she was worshiping her own gods. He said, I can't let her be here worshiping her own gods when this whole city is dedicated to the worship of Jehovah. And so he had to remove her from the city so that her worship would not pollute the worship of the true God. Let us finish this out now. Verse 14. And he appointed, according to the order of David his father, the courses of the priests to their service, and the Levites to their charges, to praise and minister before the priests as the duty of every day required, the porters also by their courses of every gate. For so had David the man of God commanded, and they departed not from the commandment of the king unto the priests and Levites concerning any matter, or concerning the treasures. Now all the work of Solomon was prepared unto the day of the foundation of the house of the Lord, and until it was finished. So the house of the Lord was perfected. Then went Solomon to Ezion-Geber, and to Eloth at the seaside in the land of Edom. And Huram sent him by the hands of his servants' ships, the servants that had knowledge of the sea. And they went with the servants of Solomon to Ophir, and took thence 450 talents of gold, and brought them to King Solomon. So again, Solomon gets the help of Hiram, because the Israelites have never really had much of a navy. They don't really have much, and they've never really had any shoreline in their kingdom. So they need somebody who is skilled with ships, and Tyre, being on the Mediterranean, it was famous for their ships. But I do want to point out again that Solomon appointed the service of the priests and Levites, but he didn't change it from what David had already done. David had already set it all out. But this rotation of service that David had set out could not be implemented until after the temple was built, because it was designed, the whole system was designed for the temple itself. And until the temple was built, these assignments, these appointments could not be actively made. So the plan was set out by David, but Solomon is the one that put it in motion, because the temple is now built. That's what it means by the temple was perfected. The building is there. Now we have the priests doing the service. After the dedication, the priests doing the service, that is what it means by the temple being perfected. Now the ordinances are being done. But that will be the end of this, and my next video I will pick it up in chapter 10 of 1 Kings. So I will see you there.